Hey nerds! Let's talk about world building. Today we're diving into how to write characters in worlds that feel real and messy and full of emotional weight. You know, the kind of book that pulls readers in and keeps them hooked. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Victoria, a sociology PhD student, fantasy writer, and someone who has spent way too much time thinking about how societies work and how they fall apart. And also, this is Remy. He is my new baby boy, so he will probably be through most of these videos because he is attached to me like Velcro. But quick reminder before we get started, if you are not subscribed yet, hit that button and ring the bell, please. I post videos when I can, grad school, with tips, tricks, and a little bit of chaos to help bring some of your stories to life. I fill everything with a little bit of a sociological bend. So if you're also interested in learning a bit about sociology and how you can utilize it in your writing, then you've come to the right place. What happens when your characters and worlds are pushed to their limits? How do these worlds break? How do they adapt? How do they fight back? We are looking at 5 key questions that will help you build tension, conflict, and depth into your storytelling, regardless of whether you're writing romance, fantasy, or literally any other genre. Although this will take more of a fantasy or at times romance bend, because those are the genres that I write in. These questions are inspired by some sociological concepts, anime and strain. But don't worry, I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible, and I'm going to keep it relevant to the writing. So hopefully you'll learn something, but it'll be something you'll be able to use. So let's get into it.
Hi, Rammer. Can you look at the camera?
All right. So question 1 that I want you to ask about your writing is, what happens when the rules of your society no longer make sense to the people in it? And like I said, this can apply to any genre. It doesn't have to be fantasy or drama or anything. It can be romance. It can be fluffy. It can be memoir. All of these apply to whatever genre you're writing. So let's talk about anime. It kind of sounds like a fancy word, or it kind of sounds like anemone. But stick with me. Anime is basically a state of normlessness. It is what happens when a society's rules and traditions or structures stop working and people are kind of left feeling lost and disconnected and kind of like, what the hell do we do now? So the concept of anime, as we use it in sociology, comes from Emile Durkheim, a sociologist who studied how societies hold together and what happens when they don't. Anime is that moment when the social glue starts to dissolve and people are left trying to figure out how to navigate a world where nothing makes sense anymore. I want you to think about your story. What rules or traditions in your world are starting to crack? So maybe in your story, there is a magical kingdom where these ancient laws start to crumble after the death of a longtime ruler. Maybe you're a sci-fi writer and you're writing about a futuristic society that relied on some sort of powerful AI to maintain things, but now the AI is offline. Whatever world you're writing, whatever the case may be, when the rules break down, people have to figure out how to survive or rebuild from the chaos.
You licking yourself? Are you licking yourself?
This dog is a menace. So ask yourself, what happens when the systems your world depends on start to fail, and how does that ripple through your characters' lives? Question 2, how do your characters or societies cope or act when their goals feel out of reach? So let's dive into strain. It is a concept that sociologist Robert Merton developed to explain what happens when there is a gap, a very frustrating gap, between what the people want and the tools they have to get there. So think about it. Society says, hey, you should be successful, you should be powerful, and you should be happy. But then it doesn't give everyone the same resources to make those things happen. So what happens next? What happens when not everyone has the resources to get those things the society has promised them? People start to get creative, or they get desperate. So this tension or this strain can really push people to their limits. Some might be innovative. They might find clever or, at times shady ways to work around the system. Others might rebel entirely, breaking rules or flipping tables, literally or metaphorically. And some might simply withdraw, giving up on the system altogether. So let's go back to your story and the story you're trying to put on paper right now. So maybe your hero or heroine has a huge goal. Maybe they're trying to save their family, they're trying to reclaim a throne, or they're trying to win back the love of their life. Whatever it is, the means to achieve it are just out of reach. So what do they do? Do they join forces with sketchy allies? Do they break sacred and ancient traditions? Do they sacrifice something that they swore they would never, ever in their entire lives sacrifice? That is the juicy drama that will be added to your story when you consider the strains that your characters or society are going through. So, I want you to do just that. Ask yourself, what is straining your characters or the society your characters are living in? How do they cope with that pressure, and what does it drive them to do? Think about it. So it could be anything. It could be your romance hero standing outside of his love interest's apartment with a boombox. It could be a prince starting a rebellion. It could be a criminal joining the mafia. And question 3, what kind of pressures shape your society's laws, traditions, or norms? So here we're going to talk about pressure. Every society, whether it is a bustling elven city or some post-apocalyptic Fallout sort of wasteland, they all face unique pressures that shape how that world operates. These pressures can be anything. They can be environmental, like a drought or a magical plague. They can be political, like power struggles between factions. And they can even be cultural, like the need to preserve traditions in the face of change. In the real world, societies create laws, traditions, and institutions to help manage the pressures of life. For example, a desert society might have strict rules about the water they use because every drop is precious. This is very true even in the real world. I live in Las Vegas. Rules about water usage are more strict here than they were back home in the Midwest, and that's because we live in a desert during climate change. Mountain-dwelling cultures might develop rituals for safe climbing, or they might have superstitions about avoiding avalanches. These are not random occurrences. These are not responses that come out of nowhere. These are survival strategies to help people navigate their world. So, think about your story again. What forces are shaping your world's norms? Maybe your kingdom revolves around a rare magical resource, and access to it determines who's in power. Or maybe there's a looming threat, like an invasion, that pushes people to band together and prioritize collective survival over individual freedoms. Or maybe the exact opposite happens. Because of that invasion, people start to act more individualistic and do not band together in a collective society. What does that mean for the people that live there? What does that mean for your characters? So that is the big question. What pressures exist in your world, and how do they influence its rules, its traditions, and its values? If you dig into that, you are going to find endless opportunities for conflict, some amazing complexity, and some chef's kiss drama in your storytelling. All right. We're on to question 4. What cracks appear in a society that is under too much pressure, and how do those cracks widen over time? So when I say cracks, what do I mean? So these are basically exactly what they sound like. It's not that hard. These are places where the society has started to split under some sort of strain. No society is perfect, right? Even the most seemingly harmonious worlds have fault lines. They have inequalities, divisions, and tensions, and that pressure can be exploited. I want you to think of these cracks as the weak point in a structure. If you add enough weight, things will start to crumble. If you have old wooden planks to be used as a bridge between two buildings, eventually you put too much weight on those wooden planks and they're going to come breaking down. The same is true for a society, whether it's a fictional one or the one that we're living in right now. In sociology, strain and anatomy often reveal these cracks. Pressures don't just create new problems, it amplifies the ones that were already there. So maybe your world has a very rigid caste system. When resources run low, the lower castes suffer while the elite hoard what is left. Maybe your kingdom has had a unified and shared religion for hundreds of years, but some sort of devastating event shakes people's faith and it starts to pit people against one another. In your story, these cracks are where the conflict will thrive. These cracks are a breeding ground for rebellion, corruption, revolution. It doesn't matter. These cracks are a breeding ground for rebellion, corruption, and revolution. Think about it. Who benefits from the current system and who is barely surviving? What happens when those at the bottom cannot take it anymore? Or what happens when those at the top feel their power are starting to slip away? Or what happens when those at the top start feeling like their power is slipping away? So here's the question that I want you to ask yourself about your story. What cracks exist in your world? And how do those cracks widen under the weight of strain and conflict? And I promise you that if you explore these weak points, it's not just going to add drama to your story. It is going to make your world feel layered and alive. It is going to make it feel real in a way that wouldn't be there if you didn't think about those cracks in the society. All right, question 5. How do different groups in your world respond to instability or sudden change? Let's talk about what happens when life throws a curveball. And I'm going to quote my very Midwestern, very boomer father here. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Thanks, Dad. Well, he's right. Not everyone reacts the same way to tough times. Some people rise to the challenge, and some people crumble under the pressure. And others see an opportunity and they take advantage of the chaos. So back to your story. When sudden change hits, whether it's a breakup or a political coup or a natural disaster, maybe even a magical catastrophe of some sort, how do different groups in your world react? If it's just a simple rom-com, how do people in that world react to breakups? What's a normal way to react to a breakup? And how does your character react to the breakup? How do different groups react to the catastrophe that's happening around them? Do some start to act collectively? Do some break away? Are there fractures in government? Do people start trusting or not trusting each other? Some might innovate, find clever ways to survive or thrive in this new environment. And others might resist, clinging to the old ways, even when the world is actively changing around them. Of course, like I said, there are going to be those who see instability as a chance to seize power or settle old scores. So it could be a rival kingdom coming in to overtake a kingdom that's going through a civil war, or it could be an ex-girlfriend who's upset about this situation who comes in and tries to cause all sorts of chaos during this breakup in the romance novel. For another example, imagine your story's kingdom is facing an invasion. Maybe the nobles negotiate some sort of peace to protect their wealth while the soldiers want to fight to the bitter end. The peasants, on the other hand, might band together to take control of what's going on for their own benefit. Each group's reaction not only fuels the plot, but also reveals what they value most, and most importantly, what they are willing to sacrifice. So, here we get to the end, and here's the final question that I want you to ask yourself about your world. So here's the question that I want you to ask yourself about your story. How do different groups in your world respond to sudden change, whether it be magical catastrophe or a breakup? And how do their responses clash or intersect? These choices are going to add depth to your world, create the kind of layered conflict that is going to keep readers reading and hooked from the first page to the final page. Great stories are not just about heroes or villains. They are about people, worlds, and systems under pressure. When you understand what strains your characters and your societies and how they respond to that instability, can create something that feels very much alive. And generally, I would say most people want there to be life in their stories. It would be a very specific creative choice to not want your story to feel alive. All right, so we've covered 5 essential questions that I want you to be asking about your writing today. What happens when the rules of your society no longer make sense? How do your characters or societies cope when their goals feel out of reach? What pressures shape your society's laws, traditions, or norms? What cracks appear in your society under strain, and how do they widen? And 5, how do different groups respond to the sudden change, and how do their choices collide? Each of these questions helps you peel back the layers of your world and your characters. Hopefully, they give you the tools to explore some conflict, create tension, and add some complexity to your storytelling. And listen, these ideas don't just make your writing more engaging. They are backed up by real-world theories, and in my opinion, even the most fantastical story can learn a whole lot from the real world. So here's your challenge to just start. I know I've given you a lot of stuff at once. It's probably feeling a little overwhelming to try and apply all of these questions to your story. So here's your challenge. You're going to take one of these questions and you're going to apply it to your story. Maybe it's figuring out what cracks already exist in your world. Maybe it's asking how your characters handle the goals that they can't reach. Whatever you choose, I guarantee it is going to unlock something fresh and exciting in your writing that you did not know was there. Or it's going to help you explore ideas that you really wanted to explore, but maybe you just weren't sure how to explore them yet. And remember, this isn't about making your world building perfect. We can't all be Brandon Sanderson. It's about making it meaningful. It's about exploring connections between your characters, their environments, and the systems that they live in. Now that is where the true magic happens. If you found this helpful, please let me know down in the comments. Which questions are you going to dive into first? Please hit that subscribe button and that little bell so that you can get more videos like this from me. I don't necessarily post every week, but I try my best to get a video out there, and we have so much more that we're going to be exploring, whether it's about writing, sociology, and a whole lot more. There's plenty of chaos to come.